Welcome to our second video. This will be our post-draft analysis of our teams who won the draft and lost the draft. I'm Baker Lehman, sitting here with Herbie May, as always, and we are going to get into our first top four winners. Herbie, how you doing?
I'm good, bro. I gotta say, it was everything we asked for and more. I mean, the first round was unbelievable. The whole weekend was just, the fact that, first of all, we're really sorry about the 2-hour video last time. The reality is that we just love talking about football. So we're gonna and trying to condense this entire draft into a shorter video this time is gonna be hard because it was just so much fun.
A lot of good picks, a lot of good drafts, but there were definitely four to me that stuck out, and I'm going to start with, I think this was the best draft by far, was the San Francisco 49ers. You start with Jimmy Ward, then in the second round you go get Carlos Hyde, and then who you get in the third round is, I think, maybe the best center in the draft, Marcus Martin. You get Chris Borland, you get Aaron Lynch, you get Bruce Ellington. Just a laundry list of stud players to me. And you get Trey Millard, the fullback from Oklahoma, who tore his ACL. But I think in the long run could end up being an absolute steal for these guys.
Really it's just not even fair. Are you kidding me with Chris Borland in the third round and then with Marcus Martin,
potential late first round pick.
And Bruce Ellington in the fourth. When that pick went, I'm so sitting in right field of the baseball game and I saw that pick, I was like, I was blown away. Just an unbelievable job by the San Francisco 49ers. Carlos Hyde, and come on now.
Yeah, just an absolute studly group of players that they have picked up. And you just have to continue to think that they're just going to get better and better. And, they drafted Marcus Lattimore, who I think might be definitely more talented than Carlos Hyde. His health is the big thing. They're probably talking about trading away Michael James. Frank Gore is on his last legs. Kendall Hunter's still there, but he's definitely more of a change of pace, not a full-time back. So worst case scenario you have here is trying to find a way to split carries between Marcus Lattimore and Carlos Hyde, which is a very good problem to have.
Do you see a future better back in Carlos Hyde than Frank Gore? I see the same type of player. I think they're in a perfect situation for him to come in.
I think so. I just think overall Marcus Lattimore, I think, just has worlds more talent than Carlos Hyde. My thing with Carlos Hyde, why he wasn't as high on my board, and I didn't think he was the top back, was because a lot of his success, despite his physical power, was the threat of Braxton Miller running faster and longer distances on the other side of him pretty much every play. Right. So, to me, I without that threat, I want to know who he's going to do. That's why I'm excited that my Bengals got Jeremy Hill, who has played in a pro-style offense and was the feature back. No one else was running or a threat to run in the play besides him, and that's why the Bengals are another winner for me. Getting Jeremy Hill, getting Darqueze Dennard in the first round was an absolute steal with their pick that late in the 20s in the first round. I just think overall the Bengals had one of the better drafts that not a lot of people are talking about, but this is a string of good drafts for Cincinnati, something we haven't seen in decades in Cincinnati, and it's very, very good to see and just exciting to see more young, good talent coming to Cincinnati.
I would personally like to say go bleep yourself for taking Jeremy Hill. That's just, the thought of having to play Giovanni Bernard and Jeremy Hill twice a season in Baltimore just really kind of makes my skin crawl and I want to jump out my window. So thank you for that. I think A.J. McCarron, what a perfect place for A.J. McCarron to go. And by the way, all I can really think about is, with a couple of these picks, I'm going to talk about my boy Taj in a second, but it makes me think of Russell Wilson, Put him in a QB battle. You know what? If you got questions about Andy Dalton, if AJ's the rightful starter, let him start. I'm
a big fan of Andy Dalton. I'm a big supporter of Andy Dalton. I still think he's the quarterback. But that with A.J. McCarron, who I think comes into a situation where he's surrounded by weapons, and they got him even more weapons in this draft. The defense is about as good as it gets in the NFL outside of Seattle and San Francisco and Carolina. I think that him coming in there, A.J. is going to play with a chip in his shoulder since he fell in the draft. Andy's going to have to play with a chip on his shoulder if he wants to keep his job. I think it works out for both players. It's going to be a great situation because A.J. can now sit, put on a little more weight, get that arm strength up, and really learn the team. And Andy, if Andy doesn't perform, he's out the door. And that's what happens, and that's why it breeds competition. I think it breeds more success. And worst case scenario, I see, maybe 2 or 3 years down the road, a quarterback needy team or a veteran team who's in need of a quarterback says, hey, Cincinnati, how about a nice second-round draft pick for that quarterback that you took from Alabama, who's just sitting on your bench now that Andy Dalton's kind of come out of his shell and been a big-time starter. I love also the William Clark pick. He's a guy not a lot of people know of. He's a third-rounder from West Virginia.
Yeah.
6'6", 270-pound guy. He's obviously going to replace Michael Johnson. I think he's a good fit in that standpoint. I like the Bengals draft. I was really happy when I kept walking away from that draft with my team.
Yeah, it really was a great job, dude. I mean, great draft all around. I hate to support other teams in the AFC North, but I love a good draft and great smarts. And that Darqueze Dennard pick, I mean, at 24, such a steal. He could have been gone way before that. You want to keep going with your next two, or you want me?
Yeah, I'm about to say, or who's another guy, or another team that you picked?
So my top team, I think, really a tough time deciding, but the Minnesota Vikings, I think, absolutely killed it. I think the Anthony Barr pick, I mean, we both had him in the top 10 in our first couple mocks, and devaluing him for only playing the position for 2 years is understood, but, I mean, I think they got an absolute kill there. I thought Teddy Bridgewater was the pick of the draft. You have to know that the Houston Texans were sitting there just, dumbstruck when Mike Zimmer slides in there and snags him. What a great pick. I think he's going to be the steal of the draft at 32. Everyone knows how I feel about him. I thought he was the best quarterback in the draft.
He's a perfect fit for what Zimmer wants to do, and I think that's going to be big for Teddy Bridgewater. Like what we talked about in the draft stuff, he needs to add about, 10 to minimum 10 pounds. I'd like to see about 20 pounds added on to him. But I just think he can do everything that Minnesota wants and more. I love the Anthony Barr pick, and I just think Minnesota got better as an offense with Teddy Bridgewater.
And, your boy Crichton went in the third to Oregon State, who you like a lot. I thought another great pick there.
Jared Allen with very similar players.
Absolutely. Jerick McKinnon, a great running back. Obviously, I'd like to see a lot more of him, just because Georgia Southern, who actually sees Georgia Southern games. David Yankee in the fifth.
Oh, great. Just phenomenal pick. Who slid? Great pick.
Anton Exum was an unbelievable corner at Virginia Tech. I think I think he slid, but I think Kyle Fuller shadowed him a little bit, so I think that's a great value pick. Minnesota did a really good job.
I agree. My next team is the Jacksonville Jaguars, who I thought first 4 picks were absolutely outstanding. You get Blake Bortles, you get your guy, you get the guy you're going to put your franchise on. He was the first quarterback taken at number 3. We've talked a lot about him. He does have some mechanical issues, but I think he's going to develop just fine. He's not necessarily going to get a chance to, there is a higher chance that he just gets thrown straight into the fire over Chad Henne, but if not, Chad Henne's a good stopgap quarterback they can use to let Blake Bortles develop and get up to speed with the big boys in the NFL. And then going out, since they don't know if they're going to have Justin Blackmon, going out getting Marquise Lee in the second round, an absolute just highway robbery steal. A great talent. He could come in and be the number 1 receiver right now and be perfectly fitted in that spot. And then you get another big body on the other side of it, Allen Robinson, who's a guy who I think is the Keenan Allen of this draft. Someone just very good, very talented, but underappreciated. And getting him at the end of the second round, I think, is going to give Jacksonville big things. And then getting Brandon Lindner from Miami, big athletic pulling guard. He can do a lot of things for Jacksonville. He could even possibly come in and start immediately, or at least compete for a spot. And the pick I like a lot, too, in the 5th round was Telvin Smith, just another good athletic linebacker. And you know how Gus Bradley feels about his athletic linebackers from what you see in Seattle now.
Yeah, Telvin Smith was one of my top guys. I don't know if I listed him as a sleeper pick, but I think I said to you earlier this year that I like Telvin a lot. And Chris Smith, the defensive end from Arkansas. I thought those 2 picks.
Yeah, that's another great pick. I also like the 7th round pick of Storm Johnson. Keeping Blake Bortles and him together, I think, is just good for team chemistry, good for keeping 2 rookies together who both have some talent. There's a certain comfort level. I think you can come in and be a change of pace back for Toby Gerhart, who's probably going to be the starter. I think him and Denard Robinson can do some things out of the backfield to help that offense.
I think there's a really solid – what I really loved about Jacksonville, what Jacksonville did, is they brought in their guy. And listen, Bortles – he doesn't have any excuses. I think he's got the cast around him is young, really talented guys, and he's the top quarterback in the draft, which he was just drafted as. He doesn't have an excuse to kind of fail in Jacksonville right now. I mean, you bring in Marquise Lee and Allen Robinson, who I think he's a complete steal in the second round at 29. And then you've already got Toby there, and you bring in your buddy Storm Johnson, who you just had an unbelievable season with. I think there's no excuse for Blake Bortles to fail here. So I mean, Jacksonville, really, you're right, one of the best in the draft, and Telvin Smith, just such a drop, such a steal in the fifth.
Absolutely. So who's your next team?
Oh, dude, I gotta say, the Steelers' first 3 picks were pretty unbelievable. I'm gonna have to talk about the Steelers for a second here, even though I really don't want to.
Never do. Sometimes you got.
Ryan Shazier, I listed him as my steal of the draft. He went at 15, which I think maybe shocked a couple people, but I think when you really look at him on film and his value that he brings to the team, you bring him in with Jarvis Jones,
we had him going to Green Bay, or I had him going to Green Bay in my mock draft, and he's going to, in that 3-4, he's going to fill that same role that C.J. Mosley did for Alabama and what he's going to do for your Baltimore Ravens, and just be that athletic coverage linebacker who can play all 3 downs, never has to come out of the game.
I think that was the perfect pick for them. Stephen Tuitt going in the second round, 14th in the second round. I think that's where I had him valued in my mind. I don't think he should have gone any earlier than that. And I think that's a perfect spot for him. And I think, really, I really love this kid, Dre Archer. I think he's the kind of kid that, who just stays close to Ben Roethlisberger. And when Ben Roethlisberger needs an outlet, just dump it off to him and let him work. So I think that's a great pick. And then the speed is unbelievable. So getting him in the third was understated at best. And Daniel McCullers, I think, in the sixth was huge value right there. They just an absolute beast from Tennessee. A great filler.
360 pounds. Just doesn't quite know what to do with all that size. But I mean, it's Pittsburgh. He's going to become a great defensive player. That's just what happens.
I think Pittsburgh did a great job of filling their needs. Which when it came down to it, this draft was so deep with talent. I know we're going to talk about it in our losers. I think it was tough to miss, but when you did miss in this draft, you just weren't drafting the right guys to help your team win.
Listen, my next winner, I believe my final winner, is the Houston Texans. They went and got Clowney. I like that pick right off the bat.
Had to.
You got the best player in the draft. You got a guy who's otherworldly talented, and you're probably not going to see another guy like this for the next 15 years. We haven't seen a guy like this in the past 15 years. And I think the work ethic isn't going to be an issue. He's going to line up all over the defense, rush with his hand in the dirt, rush standing up, rush from the middle. A guy who's going to have just elite productivity next to J.J. Watt, or at least help the Houston Texans return to being one of those elite defense in the NFL. Then you go out, you get Xavier Su'a-Filo, probably the best guard in the draft, a guy who's a highly touted recruit going into UCLA. Great fit. Perfect for what Bill O'Brien wants to do in pass protection and running the ball with Arian Foster. You go get another tight end, even though I don't think there's necessarily a need, but a good value pick in the third round.
Definitely.
But then also Lewis Nix slipping to the third round. There's your nose tackle for your 3-4. Perfect. Great fit in Houston. Going to come off, going to be very, doesn't have to be perfectly healthy or elite immediately, but once he's fully healthy, I think he's going to be a great pick. Then you go get our boy Tom Savage, who's your developmental quarterback. It could be.
Is this your guy? Is this your starter?
I wouldn't pick him my starter right now, but he might be by the end of the season. Right now, I'd start the season with Ryan Fitzpatrick, a guy who, has been a fill-in starter, and he can be your spot starter. This might not be the year that Houston gets back to being that playoff contender, but it puts them another step closer to being a Super Bowl contender within the next 2 to 3 years. I love the Jeffrey Pagan pick, another Alabama guy who I think is a perfect fit for that scheme. An absolute steal in the 6th round. You get Alfred Blue to be your backup running back, which is what his position was at LSU. Great fit. You get Jay Proche, who was a great fullback at Auburn. Get that power running game back going. And then you go get Andre Howell out of Vanderbilt. Just great draft all 7 rounds through.
Yeah, dude, I mean, with your first 5 picks here, after Jadeveon, I think every single one of those guys was considered as a second-round talent. And, you get Tom Savage in the 4th. Alfred Blue is a guy that I've always really liked. I think he's always just respected
underappreciated at LSU. There was just better talent ahead of him.
He just respects his role. Better talent ahead of him. He's just a guy who can come in and definitely help out your football team. I mean, the Houston Texans filled absolutely every single need that they had to this round, and they pulled the right move. I thought right when we got to the point where it was the last couple seconds, I was like, all right, they listened to every trade. They literally have Khalil Mack and Jadeveon Clowney up on screen. I thought maybe just for a second there was a chance they take Khalil Mack, but then I mean you just couldn't pass on it.
Just can't, and there's no reason to. So who's your last winner? Who else killed it?
My last team, I really like the Arizona Cardinals. I think the Arizona Cardinals with the picks that they had, which weren't many, I think they filled the need that they needed to. I thought Deion Buchanan, what a great pick in the first round. Not a guy that I expected to go in the first round. I was hoping he would slip and the Ravens would take him in the second. But I think there's great value in that pick. They clearly, we said teams evaluate players in a different way, and clearly they had him valued a lot higher than we ever did. Troy Nicholas in the second is a great pick, fills a need. Green Martin, one of my top defensive ends in this draft. And then I think Logan Thomas is your perfect developmental guy. I mean, I think he is a developmental quarterback, and if there's anyone you want to bring him in under, it's Carson Palmer. So I think, and your boy Ed Stinson going in the fifth as well, I think that's a great pick as well. So with, a team that didn't have many picks but had a couple of holes that they needed to fill, and I think they did a great job of filling them, and I think that pick of their draft was Logan Thomas.
I think Logan Thomas is a good guy to bring in Bruce Arians. Bruce Arians is a guy, one of those coaches who I just kind of think breeds confidence. He did a great job with Andrew Luck. Obviously, Logan Thomas is not Andrew Luck, but a guy who I just think with his measurables and his physical talent, Bruce Arians can really mold him into being that quarterback that we all thought he would be after that great first campaign as a starter, leading Virginia Tech to a Sugar Bowl. But we talked about a lot. This was a deep draft. Every team got great players, but you mentioned it earlier, Herbie. Teams just sometimes didn't fill needs. They went for a flashy pick instead of a need pick. And we talked all about take the best player on the board, but sometimes you also have to find a way to fill a need. So who's your first guy, your first team that you thought just missed on the guys they needed to get in the draft?
I think we go ahead and talk about the same team here to kick it off. I think we both agree that Carolina just kind of missed.
I like Kelvin Benjamin. I think he's a good fit, but I thought that Marquise Lee would have been a better fit for what they want to do with their offense. Just more explosive, better down the field, better with the ball in his hands. Kelvin Benjamin's a big target, and I think can be successful, but there are just some question marks about his work ethic and his hands. I think you wanted to go with more of a sure thing, someone who is consistent and focused on the game and getting better. Coney Ealy slipped all the way to the end of the second round, someone who I thought might be a late first-round guy or early second.
Someone who just became a whole lot more valuable. What happened with Greg Hardy today? What is he?
Absolutely. But I thought that you needed a cornerback or an offensive tackle, and Morgan Moses was sitting right there saying, hey, I'm your new left tackle, and you're just like, oh, well, we're going to get a backup defensive end instead.
The miss on Morgan Moses blew me away. I'm sitting there just like, how can you not take it?
You got Trey Turner, guard, not a tackle. Someone who can help your team, but not a tackle. Not a need when you had other tackles on the board you could have drafted. And then the one that also just continues to baffle me is Tyler Gaffney. The Panthers just keep taking running backs late, and I'm a big fan of Tyler Gaffney. I think he's an underrated player in this draft, but he just went to a team that he's going to get 0 reps at because they have 4 other running backs who deserve reps. So I don't get that draft pick when you could have at least add depth to your secondary or offensive line instead.
Why not take the Central? When did Central Henderson go? He went in the 7th, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Why not use your last pick in the 6th on that? I mean, you need a tackle. That's straight talent. If you're going to take someone in the 6th, might as well be him. I don't love Tyler Gaffney. I really don't. I think he's going to be kind of a journeyman. He's going to give him reps in a bunch of different places, and I totally agree. They're loaded with running backs. Absolutely no need for that pick.
And then my my second team is Indianapolis. I love the Dante Moncrief pick. I know you are, being that you go to Ole Miss. I'm a big Dante Moncrief fan as well. I think he was underappreciated. He's a great athlete for the position. He can really go up and get the ball and play any kind of receiver role you want. I'm not a big Jack Mewhort fan. I thought there were better tackles on the board that fit Indianapolis a lot better. He's going to help with the run blocking, help trying to get Trent Richardson going. But I just thought he was a little bit overvalued in the second round. Other than that, I just don't. I mean, it's a small draft. They only drafted 5 players, but I just don't see a lot of value in a lot of the players they took. I thought they could have gotten better players when they picked, and they just took. Once again, there's a ton that we don't know about their draft evaluation process. Indianapolis has been successful forever, even without Bill Polian doing drafting players. Even though they're not far removed from Polian, but they've still done well. I just thought there were better value picks on the board when they drafted than who they took, but they seem to have gotten the guys they want. But I'm not over impressed with this draft.
Yeah, I agree. I think I got another loser in mind. The Miami Dolphins did not understand the Juwan James pick in the first round.
I just think that they wanted to go a guy who was their right tackle. They didn't go with someone who is a better talent, and I think that's a lot to do with the contract they just picked. They paid Brandon Albert, and yes, Juwan James is a right tackle. You're right. Yeah. He's probably the top overall pure right tackle in the draft, but you could have gotten him at the same spot in the second round and taken someone who could have helped you for decades. And this guy, we're going to kind of see how this guy does.
I mean, he wasn't even in the conversation, and I just think that you definitely could have held off or at least traded up. I mean, they didn't have many picks to work with.
Well, who called this pick though was Mel Kiper. His last mock draft, right before he put it out, he put Juwan James. So Miami must have said something or leaked something to the media about wanting Juwan James there, and sure enough, he was the pick.
It must have been their guy, which is a thing I respect. The kid, Marcus Smith going to the Eagles, that they had him pinned for a while. I mean, if they didn't get the guy that they wanted, so when guys have a connection with a player, go ahead and take him. Personally, Juwan James, not that guy. Jarvis Landry's a guy that I like. I didn't.
Not a number 2 receiver.
Not a need. Arthur Lynch, I think, is honestly just garbage. I don't like Arthur Lynch in the long run. I just don't think, you take the North Dakota State offensive guard Billy Turner and an outside linebacker from Montana. I just thought that there was just a lack of value in this draft.
I feel like they needed secondary and pass rushers and offensive linemen, and that's really what they should focus on because they've got some pretty solid skill position players, but they took luxury picks instead of value picks. There's a ton of good talent in that draft, but most of them are luxuries and positions you didn't need help on when there was good value at positions you did need.
I agree. What else you got?
My next one is Kansas City. Once again, they got some good value at some decent positions. Dee Ford is a great fit for their scheme. Does that mean that you're getting rid of Tamba Hali in the next year? Dee Ford could end up being a star down the road, but right now you wasted a first round, not necessarily wasted, but you used a first round draft pick on a guy who's going to be good down the road when you could have gotten a similar player in the third or fourth round, just like you found Justin Houston in, and turn him into a new pass rushing threat with some talent, with some coaching and some polish. When you could have gotten a Marquise Lee, a Kelvin Benjamin, a host of good wide receivers, which was really a need. I do like the DeAnthony Thomas pick. I think he could come in, be their Dexter McCluster, almost same exact player, except I think Thomas is a little faster and maybe even overall a little more versatile. Aaron Murray, I'm not a big Aaron Murray guy. Unless the only time I was a big Aaron Murray guy was if he went to New Orleans, simply because the Drew Brees comparison is undeniable. But I just don't see him. I think you got a lower grade version of what Alex Smith already is. And as good as Alex Smith has been for the past couple seasons, and as good as he was for Kansas City this year, and I think he still will be going forward, I think when you're trying to draft a quarterback to either be his backup or his successor, you got to want someone who's more dynamic than him, and Aaron Murray is simply less dynamic than Alex Smith at this point, and I don't think he's going to get any better. I thought A.J. McCarron at least would have been a better pick, but like we said, I'm very happy he's a Bengal anyway.
Yeah, what really upsets me about this draft is just how do you miss on a receiver in the first round? I mean, Dee Ford is...
Allen Robinson was sitting right there, too. Or could have traded in for Allen Robinson.
Yeah, to trade up. I mean, it just teams that I feel like just force players like that. I mean, you got Tamba Hali already. He's already a Pro Bowler, and you go and take Dee Ford when there's... So, I agree with you. I think it just came down to missing. I just don't understand how you have the player valued like that, where you have to miss, a miss on a need.
I'll say, who's another team that you just weren't a fan of?
The Eagles. I thought they started hot. I don't understand. The Marcus Smith pick. I just said, if they value a guy, the way they do, great. I think that if you got a connection and he's just the kind of guy that fits into your defense and he's a guy that you've had a lot of conversation with, you kind of fall in love with, great, take him. Jordan Matthews, I don't totally see him in Chip Kelly's offense. Then again, I could be completely wrong. Maybe he does fit.
I actually like Matthews' pick, but I just thought there was better value than Marcus Smith in the first round as far as needs go. I like a couple of the other picks they made, but Philadelphia. I don't think Philadelphia had a bad draft. They just had a very average draft as far as maybe filling needs went.
Average. Jalen Watkins is not a guy that I've really loved, and neither is Ed Reynolds. So
I did like the Ed Reynolds pick. That was the other pick I really liked. I think he's going to turn into a pretty good in the box, decent coverage, strong safety. I just think he's another guy who needed to go back to school instead of joining the draft.
Yeah, there's a couple guys that did that who just kind of lose their value to me when it just stay in school for one more year and you can go so much higher and become such a better player. So a lot of these teams that I have missing, it really comes down to the first round. I mean, Marcus Smith kind of blurs up this entire draft class for the Philadelphia Eagles for me because I just don't see him as pick 26 in the draft.
My other team, I have kind of a tie for this last fourth spot. First is the Washington Redskins. Now, I love Trent Murphy. I love the Morgan Moses pick. That is going to end up being a very good pick in the third round. I think a steal. But Trent Murphy is your first pick of the draft. What happened to Brian Orakpo and Ryan Kerrigan? You already have elite pass rushing outside linebackers, and Trent Murphy's going to be great for the locker room, going to be great for team morale. But you needed offensive linemen. You needed cornerbacks. You needed wide receivers. Maybe even they end up getting another running back. They had a ton of other needs besides Trent Murphy, who's a good player. He's going to be a good player in this league. But I just don't need him at pick 47.
I'm going to go ahead and disagree with you. I kind of liked Washington's draft. I think they rolled the dice by not taking a tackle at pick 15. They took Trent Murphy, which I agree with you was wrong. That was the wrong pick. They got away with it by Morgan Moses somehow dropping to the third round, which was absolutely unbelievable. I'm sure when they were sitting there and they were like, wow, I really hope we didn't make the wrong pick here, but then Morgan Moses being there with the second pick in the third round, I was like, oh my God, you're so unbelievably lucky. Ryan Grant is a receiver that I've liked from Tulane, and again, he played at Tulane. Those players transferring are tough, those receivers. And Lace Sheestruck, I liked him. I really liked him a lot more when RG.
I think that's going to be a good fit. He's going to be a great spell for Alfred Morris. But overall, outside of, like I said, there are players I like in this draft class for Washington. The order that they picked positions of need kind of confuses me.
And by the way, just so I can just put this out here, if I ever achieve the dream of becoming an NFL GM, I will never draft a kicker, ever. I just don't think it's necessary at all. It's just a waste of a pick.
You find some of the best ones undrafted.
Yeah, the Ravens took Justin Tucker and was an undrafted free agent last year and went to the Pro Bowl. I don't understand drafting kickers. A couple other teams did it. It makes me completely devalue drafts.
The other one who I'm not a big fan of, once again, not because the players aren't good, especially at the top of the draft, is Detroit. I love Eric Ebron. I love Kyle Van Noy. Fix your secondary. I can't wrap my head around not fixing your secondary with one of those two picks. We mentioned Darius Slay coming back, and he's a developmental corner with a lot of talent. And yes, Kyle Van Noy helps that pass rush and helps that defense. Great. Your cornerbacks still stick. Eric Ebron, phenomenal tight end talent. Really going to be one of the good ones, I think. You just re-signed Pettigrew. You have Joseph Faria, who you obviously really like because the guy scored like 8 or 9 touchdowns and is going to be a good tight end. And as an athletic 6'9" tight end, why do you need Ebron? Is he your slot receiver? Are you going to put him on the outside and turn him into a wide receiver? Where does he get reps? So just once again, a luxury pick you don't need. So unless you're about to cut Pettigrew and just use Faria and Ebron, or vice versa, just Ebron and Pettigrew, why? Just why?
Ebron became devalued to me. I had it in my last. I had him going to Green Bay later. I just think his blocking ability just kind of devalues him as a tight end. So I agree with this pick if their plan is to slim him down and really just make him a receiver. Because when it comes down to it,
I'm about to say I don't think we've ever gotten into this, but I hate position change.
Yeah,
I get it. Like I hate position change so much. But every now and again I agree. Like Denard Robinson should not be a quarterback in the NFL. He should be a running back or a slot receiver. Fine. But I hate, and this goes into the NBA too, which is a whole other argument. I hate when guys try and turn centers into small forwards. Just keep him where he is. But you're right. They do have to find a way to use him, and I think it's going to be splitting him out to the outside more often than not. And it's just a question of whether he's comfortable doing that and if he can ever be productive consistently doing that.
I see position change differently. I say only do it if you know you can pull it off. Ebron is a guy that I think you can pull it off. I think he's a freak talent, and I think that he has the ability to do a couple of special things. But I think he's the kind of guy that you want to slim down. Kyle Van Noy, I I love him. I thought that was the best pick. T.J. Jones, a guy that I thought would go a little earlier than the sixth, but then you take the kicker, and I'm just like, what are you doing?
Yeah, but say, you have anyone else you weren't a big fan of?
I think that might have been pretty much it for me, boss man. Sorry. Yeah, my last one was Dallas.
Dallas, I can agree with that. They help themselves without helping themselves. I think I was talking to a Cowboys fan after the first night of the draft. One of my buddies here in Alabama, and he was like, "I love that pick." I was like, "Zach Martin will be the best." Or the best pick of the first round. He's going to be a great guard for the Dallas Cowboys. You didn't need him. You could have gotten David Yankee in the 5th round, and he would have done just about the same thing.
Exactly. That wasn't necessary there. Did you have anything thought that Johnny was going to go?
No, kind of, just because we were all talking about it at the office that I work in here in Tuscaloosa. But I believe you found the meme, the great meme of Jerry Jones talking to Tony Romo, and the word bubble comes up. Admit it, you were nervous, weren't you?
I was sitting there, just wasn't talking to anybody really, and I was like, are they gonna do this? This isn't gonna happen, is it? I'm like, this isn't gonna make Texas explode.
Twitter would not be readable for months. Full Johnny Manziel Dallas Cowboy tweets, but. Let's get into a little bit of the undrafted free agents. And, there are a big storm of great, talented players who weren't drafted. For me, the 3 guys who I thought needed to be drafted and weren't were Antonio Richardson, the tackle from Tennessee, and then Lucius Perafoy and Marcus Roberson, the cornerbacks from Florida. Guys who were first-round picks, all of them at one point or another, were all first-round considered talent, undrafted. Antonio Richardson's a huge body with good feet. He's a little slow, but if there are a lot of tackles who are still in the NFL who are that size and probably have less upside than him who are still starting in the NFL. And then the 2 Florida corners, again, they didn't work out that well. Perafoy's a very raw talent, but flip on the tape. What more do you want from those 2 guys who were great corners at Florida, played excellent this year despite their entire defense around them tearing every ACL they possibly could? And you don't even want to take a risk on them in the 6th round. It's not even a risk. I feel like it's a long-term investment. Perafoy, you have to teach him to. He's a guy who I'm a big fan of, and I'm mad the Bengals didn't get him in free agency. He's a guy who, maybe has to sit on the bench or down low on the depth chart for a couple of years, but he's a guy whose athleticism is going to help him be a phenomenal corner in this league. And he signed with the Denver Broncos. I think that's just robbery, getting him for an undrafted free agent salary.
I agree with you. Perafoy was a guy that I did not like. I just kind of watch him, and I get more of a gut feeling about him that just his body just doesn't hold up against the big guys in the league right now. He's a great talent, but I devalue him, and but I had him probably going. I saw him in the 6th or 7th. Undrafted was not something that I expected. That's just not a guy that I don't.
They played big time football. Great, elite level football in the best conference in the country, and no drafted. I don't get it, especially at their positions, which are so valued right now.
He was so worth a pick, so that was just a bummer. So the 3 guys that I really like, all defensive guys, I like your boy Adrian Hubbard. I like him a lot. I really think he's
I've had a man crush on Adrian Hubbard for quite some time. It was a shame to see him go undrafted.
I think I see that in your eyes when you stare at him. It's actually pretty naughty. The Adrian Hubbard pick, I think, is just a lot of value. Like I think he's perfect in Green Bay. What a perfect developmental guy. I mean, I think
Definitely. Yes. Someone who can learn from Clay Matthews. The biggest thing with Adrian Hubbard was effort and polish. You saw in that Oklahoma game, the Sugar Bowl, that end-around play where he kind of got turned around and just was like, screw it, I don't even want to run after him. He's not going to score, and the Oklahoma wide receiver just waltzes into the end zone. So while I will digress that most of Alabama's players didn't give a hoot for that game, Adrian Hubbard was one of the main contributors of that. And I think he needs to, have a lesson in his motor, and then it's just pass rushing technique. But I think he's a great value pickup for
Perfect guy for Clay Matthews to kind of mold into a guy like himself. I think this guy, Shane Scope. I don't know how Shane Scope goes undrafted.
And then he goes to San Francisco, which is just the best. Perfect. Oh, Navarro Bowman's probably out for a lot of the season. We're just going to draft Chris Borland and then sign Shane Scobb, my former stud linebacker at Stanford, and it's not going to be a problem.
because I'm the San Francisco 49ers and I deserve that. Like I just what an unbelievable steal right there. Just like something that just blew me away. And then my last guy, actually, I got one guy that I didn't like where he went. I like James Franklin a lot, and I don't think he should have gone to Detroit. I think another quarterback team quarterback in need team like the Houston Texans should have hopped on James Franklin immediately.
I meant to ask you that. Do you think James Franklin gets drafted? And I don't think Detroit's necessarily the right fit, but it's not the wrong fit. Obviously, he's not going to get to play, but I think just with all the offensive weapons and the kind of scheme they run, I think he's a good fit. It's just it's unfortunate that he's a talent who's not really going to be seen in the NFL, I think.
And I think probably my biggest Scott is probably, these guys are probably tied for my two steals, but Jackson Jeffcoat going to Seattle. I think.
Yeah, please, stop kidding. So Seattle and San Francisco continue to load up on just value position players and pass rushers and pass catchers, and the rich got richer in this draft, especially between those two.
It's absurd. I mean, Seattle's draft. I mean, I think they had one of my top drafts. I'm shocked that I didn't even say anything about them.
A lot of big name players, but just they trade back. They got more pick. Kevin Norwood, I think, can step in and be the number 2 receiver immediately. Absolutely, a guy who really showed this year he's more than just a possession receiver. He can take you over the top a little bit. He has better speed than you think, and he's just not going to drop any passes. He's a perfect fit in Seattle.
And then who else they took? My boy Cassius.
Yeah, they did take Cassius Marsh, who I'm a big fan of too. But like we said, so many great drafts. Even the drafts we thought were bad were still pretty good and are going to get good value out of. But I think we're going to wrap up this video for today. So thanks for watching, guys, and we're going to keep doing a lot more of these. And as the off season goes on, the off season continues. We get into the season. We're just going to keep talking about football.
We love it. All we want to do is talk about it. Before we go, just want to do a big Roll Toddy congratulations to Baker Lehman here. Just got an enormous job out in L.A. with NFL Network. I mean, dude, all I can say is you deserve it. I really don't want to see your ugly mug on camera any more than I have to. It's not a job yet, but it's an interview out in L.A. with NFL Network. I'm very excited about it. Hopefully I'll get to be talking about this with guys who are getting paid to talk about it, not just us sitting in our rooms here down south. But thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for all the support we've had so far. We had a lot of good views on the last video. We hope this one goes just as well.